Good morning to all of you here and all of you joining us from around the world online. This session is called All the Difference, Improving Our System from Within. We speak so much about how we need to innovate, quite rightly, to get us to the net zero by 2050 goals. But this session is going to be focusing on what we can do with our existing systems to reform them, innovate them, in order to get to where we need to be. I'm very grateful to Siemens Energy for bringing this session to us, and we're just going to play a short video before the panel starts. Thank you.
We need to find new ways to fuel our future and to energize our future society. This wonderful idea to convert wind into a fuel, which can be used in all the infrastructure which we already have. A concept like this has never been done before. We need to look at the most eligible places in the world where we can produce hydrogen or derivatives of hydrogen. The available wind power in Haru-Oni or in Magayan is just amazing. The high wind speed, the constant wind speed, and it's always coming from one direction. Haru-Oni is like exploring the future already today. For decarbonization, for society, but also for my children.
Hello. Thank you so much to everyone. Carolyn, if you could maybe sit here, Anthony over there, and we're good with Peter, so we're socially distanced. Wonderful. So, hello, welcome to our Innovator Session, our third and final Innovator Session. I'm delighted to be here in front of you again today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lauren. I work with the University of Edinburgh Centre for Business, Climate Change and Sustainability, which is why I'm here with you today, as we have partnered with Kite, New York Times, through the University of Edinburgh to work on this Innovator Initiative with our lovely innovators today. These are our final 16 innovators. I'm joined today by 5 of them, but it was 16 out of 200 applications, so it's absolutely fantastic to have some absolutely wonderful people up here. I might just dive in so we can start. If we could maybe start with you, Carolyn, and have each of you introduce yourselves and what was the driving force behind your innovation. So, Carolyn first, please.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Hogg, and I'm Managing Director of Cascade Water Products. We have created a short retention micro-domestic grey water reuse system. We are at the stage now that in a few weeks we will have a market-ready product. My inspiration came from my 4 boys. When they were teenagers, they would spend an awful lot of time in the shower, and I would be hammering on the bathroom door or the bedroom wall saying, hurry up, get out of the shower. And then I met Peter Holdsworth, and he is an engineer, and he is the one who has created the system.
Wonderful. 4 boys is it's innovation in itself, so thank you very much for being here, Carolyn. I'm going to jump over to Dr. Gladys on the screen behind me. I'm looking at you, Gladys. If you could introduce yourself as well.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gladys Kalema-Ziksoka, founder and CEO of two organizations, Conservation Through Public Health, which improves the health of people and animals in and around the national parks and protected areas, and Gorilla Conservation Coffee, which focuses on the community livelihoods, where we support farmers living around the park and give them above market prices for good coffee to reduce their need to poach and destroy the habitat where the gorillas and other wildlife live. And this is based on experiences I had setting up a veterinary department in a government agency when we had a disease in the gorillas that came from the people. And then we realized that many people are unhealthy because they're poor. I'm really excited to be on this panel today. Thank you.
Perfect, and thank you for dialing in all the way from Uganda. It's wonderful to see you. So I'm going to jump over to Anthony now, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi Lauren, I'm Anthony Burns, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at ACS. We're based here in the west of Scotland. We're the largest business of our type in Europe, and we facilitate circular business models in the fashion industry of clothing rental and clothing resale. These business models are inherently sustainable. They decouple economic growth from the extraction of natural virgin resources, but that makes it even more incumbent on us as a team to deliver them in a sustainable way. And that's what we are endeavouring to do in terms of a strong environmental and social agenda, which will hopefully accelerate the adoption of these models by our partners, the brands and retailers we work with, and ultimately the consumers.
Perfect, thank you for coming up here, Anthony. And now I'm going to jump over to Dr. Rawa.
Good morning. My name is Rawa Amar. I'm the Impact and Sustainability Lead at Resortex. Resortex is an engineering heat dissolvable stitching thread and designed for disassembly technology that empowers and enables the recycling of textiles and therefore their circularity at an industrial scale.
Wonderful, and as some of you might see, we've got a bit of some back and forth and some ways that we are related up here on the panel, so it'll be very interesting to dive into that. But holding off on that, if we could jump to our fifth and finalist panelist, Peter, if you could introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name's Peter Smith. I work for Roderick James Architects, and I'm the person responsible for coming up with the idea to build a showcase zero carbon house for COP26 to show the world what we can do with homegrown Scottish timber.
Perfect. And diving just on into you, Peter, we're going to do a little deep dive as you are from Beyond Zero Homes, and you're also a passive house designer, something that I think plays itself quite well considering today's last and final COP theme is on cities, regions, and the built environment. So if you could just dive into maybe the ethos behind Passive House, how that's playing into your day-to-day, why are you Beyond Zero Homes?
Thanks, yeah, good question. The whole idea behind Beyond Zero Homes is that it's not just zero carbon, it's about creating beautiful, healthy buildings for anybody. They're built for the affordable housing market, so it's not something that's exclusive, it's something that everyone can do and that everyone should be able to have as a beautiful home to live in.
Perfect. And jumping off of that, Carolyn, I actually think that plays quite well into the fact that you're focusing on gray water domestic reuse systems that they're completely missing from homes. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's one of the connections that I have made on my journey into grey water. So we have a number of issues with a water crisis that I have learnt about on my journey. We have water supply, we have demand management, there's wastewater and drainage, and then of course there's net zero. And Zero Waste Scotland did a study on our system, and I would say that we are the missing element of a zero carbon home.
And how are you trying to bring that into the water industry and the construction industry?
Well, we've been working with a number of water companies, speaking with Thames Water, Severn Trent Water, and we will help them, as I say, with all these various aspects. But a big driver just now in the water industry, there's two drivers actually. There is one that because of SDG 6, the water industry have the responsibility of reducing domestic water consumption to under 100 litres. And our system will help them make that cut in one hit, a 30% saving in one hit. Then there is the drive for net zero. So the water companies are busy looking at how they can get net zero into their operations. And by cutting your domestic water consumption by 30%, it is a major help because there's a lot of energy used to produce your drinking water and to process the sewage and wastewater.
Right, and Anthony and Rawa, for either one of you, I know water actually plays a huge role in the fashion industry, doesn't it? Considering there's cleaning going on, and sort of they say you can tell what color is on trend for the next season based on the dyes in the water near the factories. Would either of you care to comment just on how water plays into what you're doing and how you're looking at a circular approach really to the fashion industry?
So,
Anthony first.
So in terms of water, we have a huge operation that does some dry cleaning and lots of laundry. We recognise that we use water, so there's a few things we've done to try and combat that. We're currently carbon neutral, and part of getting to that stage was by reducing things like our energy and our water usage. So we have innovative systems that work between our laundry and our dry cleaning, where we recycle water and we capture it, and we use adiabatic coolers, which don't use any energy, to cool and heat the water depending on the needs of the business at the time. But we're also harvesting rainwater from the roof of our building. In the west of Scotland, there's plenty of rain.
Here.
So it's things that we have done to mitigate the use of water. But I would also say, as part of our laundry, we have microplastic filters on all our washing machines that capture, with 1 micron filters, any microplastics before they enter the drainage systems.
Wonderful. And Rawa, for you as well.
Yeah, if I may add to what Anthony said, we at Resortix conducted a life cycle assessment to see for a benchmark, for example, denim, we took it as an example, how much water it requires to grow the raw material for the manufacturing, for the dyeing, for the bleaching, and so on and so forth. And with the technology that Resortix is putting out there and leveraging 90% almost of the material, therefore you don't need to resource it all over again, we can reduce 3,500 liters of water per each produced denim. This is a lot of water that we can save by simply implementing or feeding in the raw material back into the circularity loop via effective recycling.
And I love that, and really honing in on the circular aspect and how each of you are looking at the environment from a circular and holistic viewpoint. I maybe jump to Gladys as you're really looking at biodiversity. I was wondering if you could touch a bit more on your holistic approach and what you're doing with your conservation coffee, and maybe even how you are looking at equitable outcomes for your supply chain and your farmers. Big question.
Thank you. We started Gorilla Conservation Coffee. It looks like this. And we named our first brand after a gorilla that I knew very well in the forest. The reason why is we wanted this coffee to be traceable to the farmers living around the park who have to share a habitat with the endangered mountain gorillas and other wildlife. And as I was going to check on my gorilla patients, I often cross coffee farms and found that these farmers are not getting a steady market or a fair price. And sometimes they would end up selling their coffee at a very low price, which meant that they had to keep going into the forest to poach animals for food and to collect firewood. So we decided to build a global brand that can save gorillas one sip at a time by giving them above market prices for very good coffee. They happen to grow very good coffee because they're at a high altitude, so they grow very good Arabica coffee. And we sell it to lifestyle of health and sustainability consumers within Uganda and around the world. This includes gorilla trekking tourists and other kind of tourists, expatriates, coffee drinking Ugandans, and people all over the world who want to help conservation or want to help, smallholder farmers, give them a fair price. They want to support a cause, and people are willing to pay additional to help. And a donation from every bag sold goes to support the work of conservation through public health that improves the health of the communities, the health of the gorillas, and their conservation attitudes and practices. And right now in the UK, we got a buyer during COVID. We got a bit of a shock during COVID when the tourists stopped traveling. And so we turned outside Uganda, and our main buyers are now Manny Robbins in the UK, and in the US, GCcoffee.us, and New Zealand and South Africa and Australia. So we're getting buyers in other countries who can still continue to support the farmers as the tourist market starts to pick up.
And our panel is really on innovators who are making systems change, so incremental steps like you are to eventually go at scale. Sort of a general question to the panel, what do you need? What can happen from leaders in policy, industry, in finance to help you scale? Or if there have been any barriers. But let's start with what you need first. Anyone with Anthony, yes.
World leaders just now and climate negotiators talk about energy, oil, transport, shipping, aviation. I hear very little being spoken about the fashion industry, and it's the second biggest polluter globally after oil, contributes more to CO2 emissions than aviation and shipping put together. And that's a statistic from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So what we believe is needed to accelerate change, sustainable change, is support in terms of legislation and regulation. I would suggest that we need to remove VAT from sustainable fashion in the UK, accelerate EPR schemes, extended producer responsibility, to stop manufacturers overproducing and make them deal with the problem that they're causing. So we're talking to politicians at Holyrood, at Westminster about VAT, and we've spoken to United Nations about this as well to try and accelerate that change.
Right, and Rawa, any comments on the fashion industry and maybe the lack of attention on the fashion industry from?
Exactly. We at Resortix are huge advocates for the EPR legislation because, as Anthony said, that is very important. But sometimes we need to take a step back and first look at the problem and realize how grave it is. The fashion industry is one of the top 5 pollutants by a new report by PCR, and it's responsible for 10% of the annual CO2 emissions, as well as $500 billion worth of lost material every single year. This is a huge numbers, and the problem is that because only 1% of the produced textiles are effectively recycled in a closed loop, meaning circular, textile to textile, otherwise it's downcycling. So we're talking about 99% that are ended up being incinerated or landfilled. What would be very helpful along with the EPR and legislation, local ones, we are based in Brussels, so we are looking forward for European Commission support of putting incentives about textile waste schemes, take-back schemes, and implementing a design for disassembly, a design for environment already at the production of the fashion, so we are allowed and capable of recycling it and have a kind of mandatory percentage of recycled content in every produced, let's say, fast fashion companies, that they are slowly working on this, but they are very, very slow, and we need bigger incentives from the legislation to support our mission.
And go ahead, Karen.
I was just going to jump in there with incentivization. I think that is a very important thing. And again, with water, it's how do you incentivize the adoption of domestic grey water reuse or the bath shower system within hotels and other accommodation. What we're finding is that I think there hasn't been a system like ours on the market, and they're just waiting for our product to be market ready, and then they can start making roads in changing legislation and incentivizing. But the incentivization can come from the water companies because they can reduce the connection charges for the developers so that they get less charges for the water supply and the sewage removal, and maybe they can make a different price band for those that are in homes with grey water recycling or rainwater harvesting and other water saving measures. So incentivization is going to be very, very important. Education is also going to be very important.
Do you any thoughts on that, Peter, considering the fact that you maybe could be using Caroline's
Absolutely.
water reuse system?
Yeah, Caroline is coming to see us later today. What I thought I would add to that, I agree with everything, but actually we have got through this process of COP exactly what we needed, which was a gathering of all the world leaders in Glasgow with a lot of publicity, people like yourselves being interested in what we've done. We've made this showcase house to show the world what we can do. We can build zero carbon houses right now. We don't need to wait until 2030 or 2050. The house is there for everybody to come and see. We're getting all this publicity. It's great. We've had lots of interesting visitors come to see the house, and everyone who sees it loves it. And I'm hoping that what comes out of these 2 weeks of COP is that it will cause a kind of system change. The fact that people have seen this house and they decide that is the way forward. It is possible right now to do what we need to do.
Right. And Gladys, I know we're kind of thinking on COP26. We're sort of looking to Africa with COP27. Do you have any plans, or are there any things you'd like to say to leaders and the UNFCCC as they begin planning for next year? Because we got to start now, considering how fast things turn around.
Yeah, these are really great suggestions from all the panelists. Yeah, COP27 is, as you said, just around the corner, and we need to look at more of, continue to build on these climate innovations and innovations to protect biodiversity. Sustainable financing for conservation should really be the way forward, so it's not so much dependent on grants. But one way that this could be done in our situation, I would say, is that what limits us getting buyers who are able to buy traceable coffee at a better price is the shipping costs. They're very high to other countries. And if there's a way that those can be reduced overall, because just the local market is not enough to satisfy all those farmers who need to be supported in order to protect the habitats, these precious habitats. So reducing shipping costs, giving more support to conservation cooperatives, creating, maybe even reducing taxes on traceable products. That could also be something that will really promote responsible consumption all over the world. As COVID has shown, you don't have to visit these places in order to make a difference. You can actually buy products from these places and still make a difference. And so I think all these things can really help in the future to help to scale up the work that we're doing and other people who are doing similar kind of work all around the world.
Right, and it's really, I think, the work coming from individuals such as yourselves, such as our innovators. It's not just the leaders, but it's coming out from individuals who have power at our individual level, I think. And so I want to turn it actually a bit, we've talked about what we need from leaders and industry, but I'm also now wondering what sort of barriers have any of you faced as you've been trying to scale? Carolyn, maybe we'll start with you as we've chatted a bit on that before.
Yes, I've had quite a difficult journey. My background is teaching. I was a part-time teacher. I've recently retired from teaching, but building the business as we go along. And funding to get started was really difficult. We've been very fortunate. We won Scottish Edge. We got Wildcard Edge and got £10,000 to build our first prototype. We've had support from family and friends and some other people. And we've managed to get funding from Innovate UK and a small amount of funding from the EU Horizon 2020 programme. But to get the larger sums of money has been very hard. And yes, I just don't understand. The water companies are interested, we've got developers that are interested, but they all seem to want the finished product. But nobody seems to want to put the money in their pocket to actually get the finished product, although we've done pretty well ourselves. And we've had people say to us that we're not scalable. And yet, earlier this summer, we were approached by a country in South America, and they're looking for 500,000 systems over 10 years. And we've now been contacted by another South American country, and they're looking for systems too. So it's funny, the market is maybe slow, and the desire for grey water in the UK is not popular, but it is getting there. The water industry is interesting and pushing for it. But I've always known this was going to be a global product after I went to EcoBuild back in 2014. And that's why I don't understand, or maybe it's just that people have not been looking globally, whereas from very, very early on, although it was my children that made me sort of think grey water was when I found out about it, it is a global product.
Right, and really thinking on the long term and how this financing is not yielding returns in the next year, but we're really trying to see it in 10, 15 years or when it's at
patient
scale.
finance is needed.
Peter, have you run into that with any sort of architectural
Yeah, I think
problems?
what we found interestingly is it's kind of changing people's attitudes, and I think that has happened a lot over the last couple of years. That maybe 5 years ago when you spoke about zero carbon, people didn't really know about it. Embodied carbon and sequestered carbon, and the whole industry, I think, has changed a lot in the last few years. It's no longer something that's alternative or an option that comes in at the end of a project. It's now becoming much more part and parcel and at the very core of what we do from the initial concept stages. So I think that kind of thing. The barriers for us have historically been changing people's minds about sustainability being part of it right from the start. I think that is changing.
Right, and changing people's minds. Anthony, I feel like that's huge in fashion, no? We're constantly reusing, recycling, buying new clothes, but we could change our entire attitude and really reduce emissions, correct? Have you seen any barriers while you've been trying to scale it, maybe in attitude or otherwise?
Absolutely. There's a few barriers. There's a lack of awareness as a starting point of circular business models. Traditionally in the UK, it's been menswear for black tie events and weddings. That's what people think about clothing rental. But now we facilitate dress rental, baby clothing rental, subscription rental for men's and ladies' wear for retailers in the UK. And we also facilitate take-back schemes for big-ticket UK retailers. But from a consumer perspective, the biggest barrier is a perception that rental clothing or second-hand clothing is dirty. And that's not the case. We use different technology, ozone in laundry and as a gas, that fundamentally kills germs and it removes odour. It does it to a medical grade standard, and these garments, when they leave our facility, are much, much cleaner than a retail garment that a consumer picks up in the high street. So we're trying to raise awareness of that, and probably the biggest barrier is similar to what Peter said there about attitudes. It's about mindset from retailers that have been used to delivering linear business models, and the change in attitude to adopt circular business models is slow. But the irony is that circular business models are much more sustainable, but they're actually much more profitable for the brands and retailers that we work with than linear business models. So it's trying to get that across to the CEOs and the forward-thinking CEOs that do adopt these models and embrace them. They'll have the businesses which will be here for the future. The others won't. They won't be here in 3 to 5 years' time.
Right, and at the New York Times Climate Hub, we've had some big name designers as well, like Stella McCartney, Ralph Lauren, and they've been saying the same thing, how you do not need to affect your bottom line, but you can still produce less and be more sustainable. Rawa, have you sort of seen that as with Resortex and with your innovation with such fantastic heat dissolvable threads?
Definitely, I cannot agree more with what's been said, because there's a great misconception that sustainability and circularity are expensive and they are not profitable. They are just good for climate, but not good for business. And we have demonstrated with our calculations that this is not true. Sustainability can be indeed profitable on the long term when it's placed properly, and because you can reduce the cost of the raw material sourcing, you can reduce parts of the manufacturing, you can reduce the CO2 of taxation, and therefore you can save. For example, I'm referring back to the study, the life cycle assessment we did at Resortex that we will launch on our website shortly, is that we can save 50 cents per every pair of denim that is recycled. and this is a profitable line for every production. So this is one main thing, is the misconception about sustainability and circularity are not expensive, it's affordable. Go back to the point that we have the technology right now. We don't want to wait. So the adoption by brands, not only in the framework of a small capsule collection or conscious collection here and there, we need to have really generate an impact. We need a full adoption for full collections and incented again by the regulations and by the consumers, because it has to go hand in hand between regulations, brands, supply chain all over, from the sourcing to the marketing, and absolutely supported by a strong legal framework.
Wonderful. And Gladys, I'm going to come to you. I know we've got some time for Q&A, but I really want to jump to you as well, whether you've seen any barriers in scaling or having trouble communicating with the fact that this is still a profitable business while having a net positive effect on the community at whole. So any barriers that you've faced for your innovation?
Yeah, we've faced quite a lot of barriers. First of all, the first barrier is getting people to pay more for a product which is linked to a genuine cause. And so we've had to really navigate looking for the right kind of customer and the right kind of businesses that support this and the right kind of impact investors. That's been a big barrier. We were lucky to get a loan from World Wildlife Fund Switzerland. That was the first loan we got. And then, when that ran out, the money that we used for the loan enabled us to engage 75 farmers. Then when that ran out, we couldn't buy all their coffee because it was very much related to who's going to buy the coffee. So after, we're lucky then to come across Solidaridad, who really helped us to engage 500 farmers, because we'd get, coffee companies saying 75 farmers is too little. And then we managed to engage 500, but now we have the issue of we don't have enough money to buy the coffee from all of them. And we have had buyers saying they want coffee from, 6,000 kilos. And where do we get it from? So it's that part of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So what we really, as was mentioned, working capital is a big thing. Lower interest loans, grants, or equity. Then that will enable us to really scale to the next level where we can engage many more farmers. And because the big companies want to see large quantities of coffee, but without that working capital, we can only engage a few farmers, and we won't be able to achieve the triple bottom line impact that we really need to see. And so, looking for the right investors and looking for the right, having enough working capital, I think will enable our business to go to scale. Because there are many other countries in Africa that have gorillas, where this model, we potentially want to engage those farmers in those countries as well. And so, so it's all pretty much the same that's happening. You have people who can support very early stage business, but not people who can support the mid stage when you're trying to scale. It's hard to find such investors who can support you at that level.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gladys. And so now I want to open it up to Q&A from our audience or our online viewers. So if it's a bit hard to see, so if anyone has questions, you just raise your hand and we'll get you a mic. Wonderful.
Hi, I'm really humbled to listen to you all tackle such barriers and create things of value for our sustainable future. I wonder what you do to sustain yourselves and nurture that climate innovator spirit.
Carolyn, maybe you could start, as we did chat about that briefly.
Yes, I use meditation, and I've found this experience actually been great because, when you're applying for grants and applying for help, it's reject, reject, reject. So to get the pat on the back, to be invited to be part of this has been a fantastic morale boost. My friends as well, they have been brilliant.
And I hope you can consider us your friends going forward.
Thank you, yes.
We'll jump to Gladys. We'll just go in and out.
What enables me to sustain myself is just seeing the difference that we're making in people's lives. That gives me a lot of energy. Just seeing a farmer having his income doubled because we've supported them, seeing that the level of poaching is going down, we're engaging reform poachers, and this is also resulting in a steady increase in the mountain gorilla population. So seeing the results is giving me a lot of energy, but also having supportive, having a great team, having great partners, having, all the support we're getting. And thank you so much, New York Times. That really makes a difference. Friends, family, partners, all the team. My husband is a co-founder of Gorilla Conservation Coffee and CTPH. We have other founders as well, and that really makes a big difference.
And to you, Anthony.
Well, we're firm believers in people, planet, profit, and doing the right thing as a good corporate citizen. It's the right thing to do. Makes you feel good that we're not damaging the environment and we're taking care of the people that work in our company and our local communities and the supply chain. Very different from many companies in the fashion industry, but also it's hugely profitable what we're doing. So it goes hand in hand.
Absolutely wonderful. Hopping over to you, Rawa.
Yes, I think what keeps me going is I am a great believer of what Resortex is capable of doing, and things are not easy. We get a lot of rejections, we got a lot of hardship, but we have a great team, very dedicated, that we nourish each other's energy. And being in such a place like today with other panelists, with like-minded people who have the same mission in mind, is very motivating. And just, yes, I need to go. Yes, we need to move forward.
And it's really a cohort, and we're pushing together, and hopefully some new partnerships will be forming as we go on.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so we'll end with you, Peter. What has been sustaining you?
I would agree with everything I think we all feel exactly the same way. The thing that keeps us going is meeting other people who are doing similar things. I think the feeling of making a difference. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, seeing Greta Thunberg, for example, standing up and actually doing something and realizing I've been waiting all my life for the grown-ups, the politicians, to do stuff, and that realization, hang about, I am a grown-up. I can do something as well, and taking the bull by the horns and actually doing something, and then meeting other people who are doing things as well. I wanted to say as well, back to the previous conversation about the barriers and things, I think that there's a change in terms of cost, the cost of sustainability. It's now becoming financially better to be sustainable, and the cost of not being sustainable is obviously way higher. So it's a no-brainer now, I think.
Definitely. Any other questions? We only have a minute, so we can maybe if you could address it to a specific panelist.
Very much. Thank you for engaging this topic. Greenwashing is a common problem and even more amplified in the fashion industry. So I'm wondering whether you think this is a step towards development, or alternatively, it's a step towards public deception, and if so, how should companies and industries be held accountable to this? Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm happy to jump in really quickly for 30 seconds. Greenwashing is really prevalent. We recognise that, and to make sure that we're never accused of greenwashing, when we look at our carbon neutrality, we have worked with academia to calculate our emissions. We used an external partner to independently and externally verify all our emissions, and we include scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions as part of our calcs. Scope 3 emissions are someone else's scope 1. They're like me driving to work. There are partners delivering parcels across the UK on our behalf, so that's what we do to make sure that we're not accused of greenwashing.
Thank you, Anthony. And with that, we're exactly on time, so we'll conclude the session here. If we could get a round of applause for our lovely innovators and the innovator cohort. Thank you. Wonderful.